Hey guys, welcome back to the Answer POV podcast. My name is Deanne and I'm so glad to have you guys here with me today. So let's get into the episode. So this morning I woke up with this amazing calm. Like everything around me is just moving so slowly. Like it's so quiet outside. And it's like a different feeling from a morning where there's a little bit more hustle and bustle, you know what I mean? But this feeling is immaculate. I love mornings like this. Anywho, getting into today's episode. Last week I put a poll up on my story asking you guys what type of topics that you guys wanted to hear, you know what I mean? And the responses were all so good. And there was one that really just stood out to me, and it was about perfectionism. And the more I thought about it, the more I sat with it, the more this other idea kept on like nagging at me. And it was the idea of waiting for permission. And I realized they really do go hand in hand. Okay, so let's think about it. From such a young age, we are constantly told to ask for permission, because if we don't ask permission, we have all these consequences. To avoid the consequences, we ask permission. Like in school, for example, like whenever you want to speak or contribute to the discussion, you have to raise your hand. Whenever you want to go to the bathroom, you need to raise your hand and get a hall pass. You know what I mean? So we were conditioned from such a young age that we need to ask permission or there'll be consequences if we don't. So the idea here is that we learn to wait. We learn to ask before we do, and we eventually learn that we need validation and we need acceptance before we actually do anything. And yeah, those are like the rules of a lot of primary schools, whatever. But then at that point, it becomes a pattern. It's not just a rule. We start to learn how to behave based on what's allowed, what's expected of us. And eventually we stop making our own decisions based on what we want and start making decisions based on what is acceptable. And honestly, a lot of the time we don't even realize it's happening. It's just our norm, right? It's like our entire personality is built around being agreeable and avoiding conflict. And all those conditioning and behaviors that we learn from such a young age carry on into our adulthood. So it's what we know. And honestly, I am going to say I am guilty as charged, because I am a formal perfectionist. And sometimes it does sneak up on me now and then, you know what I mean? But I've learned to ignore it with time and with a lot of experience. Anywho, when I would say I was a perfectionist, I used it as an excuse to hide. I used it as an excuse not to share my ideas, not to make mistakes, not to do anything. It was just a safety net for me. It was really just my excuse of not putting myself out there. And this conditioning wasn't helpful, because I trained my brain to tell me like, no, don't do it yet. You're not ready to do this thing. So it just kept me in this spot, like paralyzed, not being able to move or do anything because I'm not ready or it's not ready. You know what I mean? Because honestly, perfectionism is a self-sustaining parasite. It keeps you stuck. It tells you that if you're not 100%, that it's not worth doing. And that fear of not getting it perfect on the first try, it stops people from actually doing anything. It stopped me from doing anything. You know what I mean? And the thing is that it's not just about rules or whatever, but this idea of perfectionism, people pleasing, and fear of messing up, and constantly waiting for permission, they all are connected. They all work together to keep you small. You know what I mean? And honestly, for me, I was so consumed by this idea of doing everything perfectly that I put myself at the short end of the stick. I tried to please everybody, including my teachers, my bosses, my parents, whomever, you know what I mean? And to do that, I would constantly ask for permission. I would wait for permission. I would constantly ask people if I was doing things right. And this really did follow me into my first job. I was 18. I was terrified. And I was terrified of doing things on my own because, like, after training for 2 weeks, I would have to do everything by myself. Like, it's like a whole load of work that I had to do. And since I was also like going through my socially awkward phase and I wasn't really, like comfortable talking with a bunch of people, I latched on to that one coworker that I felt safe with. And I constantly asked him to double check all my work before I even did it. I'm like, is this right? Like, am I doing this right? And he would constantly be like, yeah, like, you're good. Like, you've been through your training. Like, you're good. Get off my back. Which honestly made me feel like a burden to him. So I would constantly apologize to him. And honestly, he was a sweetheart. Like, he was always happy to help me. Actually, everybody there was happy to help me. But then I just, being socially awkward and all at the time, I was uncomfortable and asking everybody these questions. So I would just, like, go out of my way to find my comfort person. You know what I mean? And now looking back, I honestly realized how much I didn't trust my own ideas and I didn't trust myself to get it right, or even at this point get it wrong and learn from it, because I was so fearful of mistakes because I always linked mistakes to consequences. And honestly, that slowly changed over time and just depending on my experiences, because I think when I was like 19ish, 18, I'm not even exactly sure when this was, but I started another internship at the time where I was doing research, because if you guys don't know, I have a background in genetics and cell biology, so that's what I did. And research was terrifying to me because I went from knowing the answer to knowing nothing. You know what I mean? Because when you're reading books about other people's research, there's always an answer at the end. But then when you shift into doing research on your own, you know nothing. And it was so annoying to me at the time. And knowing me, like, I constantly went up to my mentor and I constantly asked him, like, am I doing this right? Like, what do you want to do? Because in my head, it was his project that I was working on. But one thing that got under my skin in the beginning was he would always tell me he doesn't know and I should do whatever I think is right for this project. And he would always say, like, it was my project, because it was like a miniature project under his, like, general project. You know what I mean? And that line used to get under my skin, I can't lie, but it did change me for the better, because they weren't going to give me the permission that I was seeking to do things, you know what I mean? They gave me the space, they trusted me into doing whatever I wanted to do, they allowed me to mess up and to learn from it. And honestly, that was like once I started to learn how to trust myself, because once he called me out on my BS, then I learned to call myself out on my own BS. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, like, you got this. Like, I learned to trust myself through the process. And I gave myself some grace, because obviously this is something that hasn't been done yet and I'm learning, you know what I mean? So I allowed myself to make mistakes, and every idea I had failed. Then it failed again. I tried again and failed again. Got some new ideas, failed again. And it was the first time I realized that failure wasn't the end all be all. It was just a part of the process. But honestly, the biggest lesson I learned then was that I didn't need to wait for permission to make mistakes. I could just try things. I could mess up. I could figure it out as I go. Because honestly, like, the first time you do anything, it's gonna be shit. The second time you do it, still probably gonna be shit. But eventually, you'll get the hang of it. You'll improve, you'll grow, you'll get better. You know what I mean? And this whole idea of permission seeking, perfectionist, fear of consequence, trifecta there, it's like a parasite sucking the joy out of your soul. Like, it keeps you small, it keeps you scared of making mistakes, and then that keeps you paralyzed. And honestly, like, the point of life is not to get it right the first time, right? The point is to fumble. The point is to mess up, to learn, to mess up again, to get better. And then keep messing up in new ways and finding better ways to get better. You know what I mean? And during this time in our lives, like, we're transitioning into adulthood, we're figuring it out, right? Everything is new to us, and it's okay for us to make mistakes. And honestly, that's okay, because that's the whole point. You know what I mean? And there's this time actually when I first got to college, my first ever semester was one of the toughest semesters for me. It was so hard because in high school, even like when I did PSEO and I was taking college level classes, um, I like everything just came easy to me. Like, not to like toot my own horn or anything, but in the beginning, everything was just coming so easy to me. There was always an answer. Like, I was passing all my classes with flying colors, um, and like, I was good. Like, I was good academically. And when I transitioned into college, like when I went to the university that I attended, it was honestly like a switch flip. Like, it was downhill. I struggled with everything. I was practically failing like 2 classes at the time. And when I say failing, I mean like bottom of the barrel failing. You know what I mean? I had a 43% in my stats class that I ended up dropping, and I was struggling to have like a C in biology. And you're like, Raylan, you're a biology major. How the hell did you fail biology? I don't know. But I was honestly struggling. It was so hard for me. And I went from knowing everything and being this perfect student, um, and doing so well in everything that I did, to doing horrible. And that was just a hard pill for me to swallow at the time. And I was constantly chasing this idea of perfect. I didn't even allow myself to adapt to what was going on around me and to seek help where I needed help. Because I had a certain study routine that I was so used to, and it wasn't working for me. So I didn't adapt to like a different ways of doing that. And it honestly sucked. Like, the first semester sucked so bad because I was so afraid of asking for help when I needed it. I was so afraid of not being perfect that I just like spiraled. Like, I literally spiraled. But then I continued to chase perfection, right? I started studying longer, working harder, putting in more time, and I was still failing. And the reason was honestly that I wasn't adapting. I kept trying to do things the old way, the way I did it in high school, and expect it to work for me in college. And I thought if I did more, I could force perfection. But perfectionism doesn't move you forward, it holds you hostage. So I was so consumed by not wanting to be a failure when it came to my academics, and I ended up creating the exact thing that I was afraid of. I wasn't learning, I was just surviving, and it took me a while to even realize that that's not the same thing. So perfectionism is gonna be the thing that's gonna hold you hostage, because it forces you to constantly do more in something that's not working and keep you where you were, um, and not allow you to become better. You know what I mean? It doesn't allow you to mess up and move forward. But also, another lesson that it taught me is that waiting doesn't protect you, it just holds you back and keeps you in this fear cycle. Because honestly, like, if I was still waiting for things to be perfect, I wouldn't even be here right now, genuinely. And that's because I was waiting for the perfect moment, or I was waiting for it to be perfect, because the reality is it's never going to be perfect, because you're always going to find something wrong with it. You know what I mean? I'm going to use this as an example because why not? For me, it took me about 6 months for me to even start this podcast, which sounds a little ridiculous, but then I kept on finding something wrong with it. I was like, well, it's not perfect. Like, I don't know what I want to talk about. I don't want to, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? I didn't know what this podcast would be long term. Like, genuinely, I still don't even know what I'm going to be talking about in 5 to 10 years from now. But the idea is, like, if I listen to myself and I was like, well, it's not perfect enough, I don't have like topics to talk about for the next 3 episodes, or whatnot, I would continue to just sit on it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't upload my podcast. This podcast wouldn't even exist if I continued to wait for it to be perfect. And all these examples I just gave you guys about my own life, the whole reason that I wasn't doing well, or I was failing, or I struggled with putting out my first episode, was because I was waiting for permission. I didn't trust myself enough to figure it out. And most importantly, I didn't want to take initiative. I kept waiting for somebody to tell me how to fix it, how to move forward, and to tell me what to do. And in that waiting, I lost time and I lost confidence as well. And perfectionism and permission seeking, they kind of feed off of each other. I didn't want to take responsibility for messing up. So I kept trying to get everything right, and I kept on trying to get other people's validation to do something. And honestly, I was so afraid of making my own decisions that I started failing first year of college. I pushed off my podcast for 6 months. And honestly, I didn't even learn as much as I possibly could from a lot of my internships because I didn't want to be the one making decisions, be the one failing. But once I started failing and once I started putting myself out there, I learned from those mistakes. And those mistakes were the ones to help me get to where I am today. So honestly, like once I stopped making excuses for myself not to do something, or kept telling myself I have to redo something for it to be perfect, and overall force myself to make my own decisions, I've realized that it's not the end of the world to make a mistake. It's really not. It's never such like as big of a big deal you think it is in your own head, if that makes any sense. Like that first podcast episode, yeah, I was really nervous on uploading it or telling the world about it. Even though I think it's imperfect, it's totally fine. Like, it's not the end of the world. There was a time, like, I think when I worked my last job, I was working as a lab tech. I started a small fire. Like, it was actually very embarrassing for me. Thinking back now, like, everybody just laughs about it now. But I did start a fire. It was a huge mistake. I took the fire out. But then I did my fire training again, and I was fine. Everybody was cool. Nobody died. You know what I mean? And all those tiny mistakes are meant for you to learn from. And the more you avoid making mistakes and all of this, the less you're able to grow, because you're letting perfectionism and permission seeking keep you paralyzed and unable to live the life that you want to live. And as I said earlier in the podcast, that the point of life is to allow yourself to fumble, because you're not going to get things right at the first time. You're allowed to mess up. You're allowed to move at your own pace and to just keep things moving. You know what I mean? And I feel like we tend to forget this a lot because we see so many people succeeding around us. And we're so connected to all of these people via social media. And you see like people that are roughly your age doing all these amazing things, which is like good for them. You know what I mean? But sometimes we tend to look at ourselves and tell ourselves that we're behind. But honestly, like, what does that even mean? Like, behind who, behind what? You know what I mean? Who set this timeline that we have to follow to the T? And just like realizing that you're not really behind, you're just early in your own process and you're right on time for your own life. And just understanding that you are allowed to move at your own pace. You're allowed to figure it out in your own way. You're allowed to not have it all together right now. Because let's be honest with ourselves, we are transitioning into adulthood. We're figuring this out by ourselves right now. Like, there's no guidebook on how to have the perfect life. You know what I mean? So just understanding that you're on your own path and your own timeline. And I think we need to hear that a lot more these days. You know what I mean? So honestly, if you are waiting for permission to start to take up space, to do that thing that's just been nagging at you, this is it right now. This is your green light. Go do what you want to do and just live the life that you want to live, because honestly, we're not here for long. So why not do that thing that we've been wanting to do? Allow yourself to make those mistakes. Allow yourself to be messy, be bad at things. Because the reality is you have to be bad at things in order to be good at them. You know what I mean? You get better with time, and the more you repeat it over and over and over again, the better you get. And you really just need to allow yourself to try, right? You need to allow yourself to fail, and you need to allow yourself to take your time. And most importantly, you're allowed to be a work in progress as long as you're moving, you know what I mean? So before I wrap this up, I wanted to tell you guys a few things that helped me loosen the grip of perfectionism on my soul, you know what I mean? So first things first is you just need to rip the band-aid and just do that thing that you've been thinking about. For example, like I was terrified of animals for my whole life, and I decided that I wanted a cat. And instead of just like allowing myself to overthink and just be like, well, cats are this, that, or they come with a lot of responsibility, whatever it was, I went to the shelter and I adopted a kitten. That's what I did. And I'll be honest, I was terrified for a few days, but I brought him home. I was going to take care of him. And now I absolutely love my cat. You know what I mean? Another, like, I guess more common fear is fear of posting. And I know I'm not the only person that is terrified of posting things out there, putting your work out there. So I started posting on social media again last summer. And it was nerve-wracking. Like, there's a lot of things that I was like, maybe I shouldn't post this, you know what I mean? Like, I allowed myself to overthink, but then I'm like, you know what, whatever. I just hit post. I keep it pushing. When I started doing photography, I started posting about it online as well, and I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna post it because who cares? Genuinely, who cares? And even if people do say all these negative things, why do I care? You know what I mean? Like, why would that even bother me? Your opinion is your opinion. Keep your opinions over there. You know what I mean? Okay, so the second thing that I wanted to share with you guys is start making your own decisions. It can be something small, like it can be like what you want to wear today. Just choose it because you want to wear it. You know what I mean? Or choose that thing because you want to do it and just stick with it. Like, even if somebody else does not like your outfit, just wear it because you like it. You know what I mean? Another thing that you can do is do something messy. And this can be journaling, painting, speaking your mind. Allow yourself to be your unfiltered, uncensored self. I decided to paint, I think like 2 years ago. And let me just say, I'm an awful painter. I'm not the best. I still paint even now, like occasionally, like here and there, mainly because it's fun, it's very calming. It's probably terrifying to look at, but you know, I do it because it's fun. It's fun for me, you know what I mean? Another thing that you can put into practice is say no without explanations. Like, sometimes you don't owe a full breakdown of your boundaries. Like, if there's something that you don't like, you can be like, you know what, I don't like this, so I'm not gonna do it. You know what I mean? Like, one day you don't want to go out, you can be like, you know, I don't want to hang out today. Sorry. You know what I mean? End of story. You don't have to go into why you can't hang out or come up with excuses. You can just say you don't want to do something. Because honestly, like, if you don't do it, it's not the end of the world, and it shouldn't feel that way. And last but not least, a good practice to have is to ask yourself, what is the worst possible thing that could happen if it's not perfect? Because once you start sitting with it, then you realize that all your excuses and stuff are honestly not a big deal, and you're going to end up doing that thing because it's like, okay, yeah, it's not perfect, but it's still good. And honestly, I feel like that is one of the best advice that I've received from other people that allowed me to even move forward, because there's some episodes that I look back on that I'm like, okay, like, yeah, I didn't really like that much, you know what I mean? But it was still pretty good. Like, just because I didn't think it was perfect or it didn't meet my crazy high standards for myself, it was still a really good episode and it resonated with other people. some of my photography that I take, like I'm like, okay, like I didn't really like this one, but then there's so many people that love it, and I'm just like, okay, so I have these crazy expectations for myself, and if I continue to try and meet the bar before I do anything, then I wouldn't be doing anything at all. Anywho, just like everything else in life, this is going to take practice. It's going to take practice to let go of this idea that everything has to be perfect, or let go of the idea of this need to seek permission from others or validation from others. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And you start to make those new connections in your brain. You start to understand that you don't need permission from other people, or you don't need things to be perfect in order to do it. You know what I mean? And I will be 100% honest with you guys. I do still catch myself overthinking, or I try to come up with excuses for myself not to do something. But the one thing that really helps is to just rip the band-aid and to just do it anyway. Like, there will be times where my hand is shaky or my voice is unsure. Sometimes, like, I can feel my heart racing, you know what I mean? But I just do it anyways. Once I rip the band-aid, then I start choosing myself. I start showing up for myself even when I'm not ready, or even a little bit messy. But then the idea here is that you start to show up not because you're ready, but because you know that you don't need permission anymore. You're not seeking that external validation or just need for everything to be perfect. You're just letting things be and moving on from it. You're letting yourself mess up. You know what I mean? And honestly, I feel like life is just way too short to wait for the perfect moment or wait for the perfect opportunity, because honestly, like, that perfect moment or whatever doesn't exist. Right now it does, so why not just rip the band-aid? Anywho, that is all I got for you guys for today's episode, and honestly, I am really proud of this one. If you guys like it, please leave a comment and review. It means so much. And if you are enjoying the podcast, feel free to share it with your friends and family. You can always tag me on socials at AnsPOV. Thank you guys so much again for listening, and I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day, and I will catch you guys in the next episode.